Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. It is that time once again to take a look at the best champions as of the current patch. There are definitely going to be some new faces throughout this list, with some familiar ones coming up as well, but there's going to be 3 new ADC champions that seem to be really taking the spotlight, and ones that I highly recommend you start watching out for. So if you guys end up enjoying this video and you want me to continue making these top lists for every patch, then let me know by hitting that like button. But as per usual, this video will be made in collaboration with ProGuides, a very familiar name by now. It's a website that tries to improve your overall gameplay knowledge and mechanics, and just overall tries to make you a better League of Legends player. I'll have a link to the website down below in the description where you can try it out completely for free. There is a free trial, so there's really nothing to lose, and I highly recommend checking it out. But without much further ado, let's get right into the best champions of the current patch. So speaking of the ADCs, let's start off with them first. So let's go all the way down into the bot lane, and first, let us talk about Tristana. Tristana is making her way back into the meta, and I feel like she's going to become more and more stronger as people begin to realize her true power. The reason she is quite good at the moment is because not only does she obviously have escapes, but she also scales really well, and she also fits the meta very well because currently ADCs abuse crits, right? Infinity Edge, usually going a double Zeal item like Static Shiv and Rapid Fire Cannon, maybe a Phantom Dancer. And Tristana, someone that has her own steroid, being her Q ability that gives her an insane amount of attack speed, especially later on to the game. The amount of times that she can crit is just so much higher than so many other champions that if you get to that point of the game, it's gonna be really hard to stop her because of also the range that she gets on her autos. But to make things even better, I mean, the current game is becoming more and more macro focused, getting towers, getting objectives, and Tristana is probably the best ADC when it comes to destroying towers, all thanks to her Q and E combination. All in all, Tristana is just definitely up and coming. She's, in my opinion, becoming quite OP, so if I were you, I would either pick her up and or begin to watch out for her. But let's very quickly take a look at the recommended build for this champion. So you can definitely either go Fervor of Battle or Warlords, but Warlords tends to be just better because it does take a while to get lifesteal with the current popular ADC builds. Of course, getting Static Shiv, Rapid Fire Cannon, and Infinity Edge usually as your first 3 items, so Warlords helps with this quite a bit. The items by now should be somewhat self-explanatory. I mean, I already talked about it several times, and other than that, everything else should make obvious sense. But following Tristana, there's yet another ADC champion that I want to quickly talk about that's also becoming stronger and stronger, and definitely someone I'd watch out for, and that ADC is going to be none other than CORKI. Now CORKI is going to be a little bit of a special pick in a sense because even though he is obviously an ADC champion, he does do a lot of magic damage, and I do recommend playing him more in the mid lane than down in the bot lane. Now the reason I call him somewhat of a special pick is because even though he is still an ADC, you probably should be playing him in the mid lane, and you are going to be dealing mostly magic damage because of the rework his passive recently got. But the items that you get on him are still gonna be ADC like, because you're still gonna be going things like Infinity Edge, Trinity Force, things like Rapid Fire Cannon and or Static Shiv. And the reason he's really good right now is because he just does so much mixed damage. Before, his passive gave him a 50-50 with physical and magical damage split, but now the fact that his passive essentially does almost full magic damage, if you still go for these standard ADC items like I just mentioned with Infinity Edge, Triforce, a Zeal item, you're not only doing a lot of magic damage with your auto attacks thanks to your passive and even your spells, but you're also doing a lot of auto attack damage just because of your items that you're getting. Essentially, it just became even more difficult to actually itemize against CORKI properly, so you may want to watch out for him. On top of all of this, his laning phase is actually quite safe. He has fantastic roam potential with the package from mid lane, and there's just a whole lot of things he can do, and he's easily up and coming, so if I were you, I would definitely watch out for him. But here's a recommended build for CORKI. Now you want to go actually Sork Boots because you still want the magical penetration since most of your damage is going to be magical. Your runes, items, and even masteries are all gonna be a pretty simple and standard typical ADC page. Now the final ADC I'll talk about in the honorable mentions section, so we'll have to wait till that. But for now, let's talk about another mid lane champion that is insanely strong at the very moment. And that champion is going to be none other than Malzahar. Malzahar at the moment apparently is probably the top mid laner in the game. I mean, he is insanely strong. He does a lot of damage. He has great wave pushing potential. His ultimate is probably one of the easiest and strongest ways to catch someone out of position. The damage ever since his ultimate got reworked, now that it does percent damage damage and actual base plus scaling damage is insanely good as well. His voidlings do quite a bit of damage, and I mean, Malzahar is just a good champion. He's very obnoxious to face, his passive is pretty annoying to deal with, he works well with a team, and I mean, he's just one of those champions. His weakest point is most likely going to be his early laning phase because he doesn't have a whole lot of options at that stage of the game, and if you all-in him, he can't really do much about it. But if you let him scale, if you let him get his core items, his Deathfire, his Rylai's, and his Liandry's, I mean, it'll all just work so well together. You'll shred squishies, you'll shred tanks, it's hard to stop him, and just very obnoxious to face as well. So here's the recommended build, Deathfire being your keystone of choice for items, Morello's for the CDR, followed by Rylai's and Liandry's for that synergy with the E. But other than that, I mean, everything else should be somewhat self-explanatory. Oh, and I forgot to say, Malzahar is still one of the few champions that legitimately has a silence ability. Now let's move our way over to the jungle because there's some new champions and even some familiar champions that I want to quickly talk about. The first one is going to be somewhat of a new face, and that's going to be none other than Warwick. For so many of these patch videos I've been talking about Nunu, Ivern, Zac, and even though some of them are still going to be on this list, I wanted to bring in a new face. Now Warwick is a champion that I personally absolutely hate facing, and I feel like my win rate against Warwicks is pretty damn low. The reason for that is actually quite simple. I mean, the champion is just very hard to deal with. He has extremely good chase potential. He obviously knows where you are on the map if you are ever at half or less HP, which is also quite annoying because you have no idea where he'll come from. His ultimate is one of the best initiators, and at the end of the day, I honestly believe that his Q with how it can follow flashes, the amount of health he gets back, and his E ability with the damage reduction that it offers is quite damn OP. So if this guy ever does get an early lead, he will snowball to the point where not only is he going to be doing a lot of damage, he'll have a lot of lifesteal, and he will feel almost impossible to kill, unless maybe you have a Malzahar. So in my opinion, this is the champion that I almost always ban if I don't have to ban some other champion instead. Definitely something you want to watch out for. But regardless, here's my recommended build when playing Warwick. Now you can definitely go Courage of the Colossus as your keystone, but if you want to spice it up and make it more interesting, Fervor of Battle is really good because of the synergy with his ultimate. However, following that, your build path is going to be relatively tanky. You want to get an early time at because it does help you with the jungle clear, especially when you do Raptors or the Krugs. You also want to level up your W first and get a few points into that because of the chase potential that it offers, and it's pretty damn OP. But following Warwick, we have yet another jungle champion to talk about, and is going to be Zac. Zac is still such a strong champion. I mean, he's just not getting the nerfs he needs. So if that's going to continue, then he will continue to stay at the top of the jungle. And the reason for this, like I've said many times before, is very simple. He has not only a lot of tankiness and scales really well, he's able to regenerate a lot of HP, he has a great jungle clear, he has one of the best ganks, his Q is probably just a little too strong still in what it can really do. Just overall fantastic initiation, great stick potential, a lot of annoyance, very hard to kill, still deals a lot of damage, has great ganking potential, has a lot of range on his E, just a whole bunch of things that a jungler wants that he has, and he's just not someone you want to face, trust me, especially if the person knows exactly what they're doing on the champion. So with all that being said and done, here's the recommended build for Zac. Your keystone of choice is going to be Courage of the Colossus for quite obvious reasons. But other than that, for items, you want to get relatively tanky items since your main job is still of course to be a tank, but luckily for you, you do scale off of this quite well to where you'll still be doing some decent damage. But following Zac, there's going to be yet another somewhat new face in the jungle, and that's going to be none other than rek'sai. Ever since rek'sai's rework, I mean, the champion has been quite lackluster, but ever since the changes once again and the buffs and all that good stuff, well, she seems to have finally found her place. She is quite strong, and the reason for that is because not only is her clear path good, but she still has the fantastic ganking power with her E ability, but now you can use it so much more frequently. Her W is now only single target knockup, but that's a perfectly okay thing. The biggest reasons is because, well, you can fill up her rage bar in a mere of 4 auto attacks or spell casts or whatever, so it's very quick. And on top of this, her E ability, which you max first now, does an insane amount of damage, and if all else fails, if the person is just barely getting away, well, your ultimate is an assassin ultimate now. You'll just finish him up without any problems. It's almost impossible to dodge it. The damage is quite damn high because it is an execute type ability, and I mean, rek'sai just scales well. It's just annoying, has a lot of damage, has great ganking potential as well, and synergizes even with Yasuo's, which we see in almost every game if he's not banned. All in all, just a fantastic champion at the very moment. Here's the recommended build for this champion now. Similar to Warwick, even though she is somewhat of a tanky champion, or I guess an off tank, you also want to go Fervor of Battle because you still go primarily for damage while also having a bit of tankiness in there as well. So with that being said, your items are going to be Warriors, Black Cleaver, you can even throw a Titanic Hydra in there if you really want to, which works quite well as well. And following that, you get relatively tanky items, maybe like a Deadman's, a Guardian's Angel, and things like that. Now let's make our way down to the bot lane once again and talk about a support champion, one that I feel like is not only just extremely obnoxious, but in my opinion, if you know at least what you're doing a little bit, is probably the best and most impactful support at the very moment. That champion is going to be none other than Blitzcrank. Now, this guy has always been a very interesting champion in solo queue because at the end of the day, even if you miss almost all of your pulls, if you just land that one money pull, maybe mid game or especially late game, that's probably going to be winning you the game. All it takes is one pull, and this guy can make it or break it. That's just how much of a toss-up he is, and in solo queue, that tends to work out quite well. He can catch people off because people in solo queue tend to be quite uncoordinated. You can roam very easy with this champion, especially if you get your mobility boots quite early, and he just has a lot of pressure, a lot of impact. He counters a lot of popular ADCs, like for instance Jhin, that I'll talk about very soon. And I mean, if you just want to have a support champion that actually has a true impact in the game rather than, you know, maybe someone like Jan or Soraka that kind of sits in the back, Blitzcrank is without question your go-to. So here's going to be the recommended build path for Blitzcrank. I feel like for the most part it is quite self-explanatory. Again, getting the early mobility boots helps you roam that much more, and the synergy with your W makes the gap close and the potential and the threat for the hook that much higher. And the final champion I want to talk about in the top lane before I go into a couple of honorable mentions is going to be Fiora. Now, I talked about Fiora in the previous iteration of this video, and I'll talk about her once again. She is the bully of top lane. I mean, this champion can in theory beat almost any top laner just because of the nature of her kit. And if God forbid you get the game to 40+ minutes, there's a decent chance that Fiora can 1v1 almost any top laner in the entire game, with maybe the exception of Jax. Her scaling potential is just absurdly high, and I mean, even with a couple of nerfs, that's not going to be enough to stop Fiora. So if you ever want to play a champion that's not only fun, but does a lot of damage, can do a lot of things, and can hard carry games, and you're in the top lane, Fiora is definitely a good option. And here's the recommended build path. Further, of course, being your keystone of choice. For your items, you can go Ravenous Hydra or Titanic Hydra with a Black Cleaver. Death's Dance is great as well. Maybe going like a Guardian's Angel, Bloodthirster. All of those are fantastic items, and they all work exceptionally well on Fiora. Now, a couple of honorable mentions before I end off the video. First of which is going to be the third ADC that I wanted to talk about, and that's going to be Jhin. Now, Jhin is easily coming back into the meta, and I'm sure some of you already know this, some of you are quite aware, but Jhin is really strong, and he's easily one of the top 3 ADCs at the moment. He does so much insane damage. If you go for Infinity Edge with, of course, the Rapid Fire and the Static Shiv, I mean, you'll just be doing so much damage. It's actually quite insane, and it works even better on him just because of how much base AD he gets thanks to his passive and just how his kit synergizes with the crit and these items and the attack speed. Following Jhin, we also have Nunu in the jungle, who is arguably still the best jungler at the moment when you look strictly at win rates. The reason for this is still very simple. I mean, he's just a macro type of jungler. He buffs up his ADC, which is a very good role at the moment. He's able to do a lot of early objectives because of the nature of the champion, and he's just hard to deal with and is honestly quite obnoxious. And the final champion is going to be Ivern. Like I said, similar to Nunu, also the other very strong support-ish utility type jungler that just plays the macro game, buffs up the ADC, and just becomes a huge nuisance for the enemy team. But either way, guys, that's going to be it for this video. There you have it, the new best champions of the current patch, with 3 ADCs up and coming, some of which are of course already more prominent than others. Let me know what you think about this list down below. If you enjoyed the video, hit it with that like button. But I thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't. Check out my other videos as well, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.